as many of you know, about a week and a half ago, my mom passed away. She was 94 and a half, long life. So she had 525,600 minutes times 94 and a half years. That's a lot of minutes. It's a lot of moments. It's a lot of memories. It's a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of good times. It's a lot of difficult times. It's a life. Whether our life is long or short or somewhere in the middle, those moments, those minutes, those things make who we are. Those things, those seasons of love or hate or indifference can be what our lives become. Now, as a medium, as a spiritualist, when we have somebody that we love pass, we still have to do our grief. I know that she's fine. I know that we've had communication. I know that life is eternal, but physical life is not. So we have to do our grief. We have to do our sadness. We have to look at all of those minutes, those seasons, and reconcile them in our life now. And I know when people pass, a lot of people that I work with as a client, from the mediumship end of it, when they have people who pass, they're always looking for the big signs, like, when is my mom or my dad or my sister or my brother or my son or my daughter going to stand in front of me? When am I going to see them? When are they going to speak to me in that way? And I've come to realize, through my mediumship, that it's not always the big signs. It's very rarely the big signs, because we ask the spirit world to do a lot of things that sometimes they're not very capable of doing, because we need it. And a lot of times it's the small things, it's the small signs. I know with my mom, there was a moment after her passing that I got an unbelievably strong sense of absolute joy. And I know it wasn't my joy at that moment, because I know she was free of a body that no longer worked for her. And I know that that was her expression of how she was feeling. And then the other night I was sitting watching TV, really not thinking of much of anything. And all of a sudden in my mind's eye, I saw beautifully straight young hands. Now, many of you who know my mom, who came to the center, she had rheumatoid arthritis. So her hands became somewhat non-functional. And so to see those hands straight and young and beautiful, I know that that is what she is experiencing now. So for my joy for that, but also my sadness that she's not here in the physical world. And for all of us who have people who've passed, that we get waves of kind of memories that come in, right? They kind of flood in when we least expect it. And something that has been kind of flooding into me this week goes back to my youth. And I grew up primarily in the late 50s, mostly into the 60s, early 70s. That was my childhood. My childhood was a little bit different than many of my friends in that time period, because my dad traveled a lot for work. So he may have been gone for a week sometimes. He may have been gone for 3 weeks if he was overseas. Many times, it was just into New York and back out. But there were chunks of time where my dad traveled. And most of my friends, and maybe some of you have similar experiences, it was always like their moms would say to them, well, you better behave, or I'm going to tell your dad when he gets home, or wait till your dad gets home. That was always the big threat. But in my family, in my household, it wasn't so much of a threat, because my dad wasn't the one who really implemented the rules and the regulations and the things. It was my mom, because my dad traveled. So when one of us had to get braces, or when a big decision had to be made, it was my mom who was making those decisions. So I grew up never thinking about because I was female, I couldn't make a decision, or because I was female, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. And the first time, honestly, in my life, I had to come to an understanding that the world thought differently than that was when I was filling out my college application, because again, it was always assumed we would go to college. It was always assumed we would go to college. And so when I'm filling out this application and I come to the place where you put all your personal information, and it had check off kind of like who you are, and female was under the other category. It was men and then other, male and other. And it was the first time I realized that the world saw gender differently than I grew up with. And it was kind of a shock to me, and I had to kind of come to terms with it. And all of my adult life, there have been these life lessons that have come around that. Whether it was my job in textiles, which was very male dominated and very Southern male dominated, and I was seen at 22 years old in the textile business as, somebody who could go get like the beer, or who could go get the snacks. And I had to stand up for myself. And I had to say no, and I'm here because of production. So all of these kind of things that have come up, have been reminders for me of what our choices can be in our life. It doesn't matter how we grew up. Now, I say that, and I do understand many people have had difficult growing up periods, and I don't mean to say that that doesn't bring something into our life. It does. But as adults, we have choice. As adults, we can put into and implement things that make our life better if it's not. We all go down the rabbit hole in times of our life, whether it has to do with somebody's passing, whether it has to do with a job issue, whether it has to do with a relationship issue, whether it has to do with a family issue. There's issues galore in life, aren't there? Everyone has had to deal with difficult situations, but it is our choices that lead us out or keep us in. And those choices, to me, our free will, our personal responsibility, are such wonderful gifts of humanity. When I look at the concept of God, I don't look at the concept of God as creating. I look at the concept of God as what we can create out of who we are, what our choices are. That to me is the God gift within each one of us. And it's not so easy sometimes. It's not. But we have 525,600 choices every year to do something different, or to do something more, or do something less, or do something in a different way. Choose to get up in the morning, choose to grieve, but choose to live. Choose to worry, but choose to move out of that worry. With COVID, it gave me a lot of time, on the couch, gave me a lot of time to think. And it gave me a lot of time to look at life in a slightly different way for that time of I could lay here for the rest of my life. I could die because I had trouble breathing. I could die. And my mortality came to me in those moments of time. But each hour I chose to get up and walk around, as difficult as it was, so my breathing would regulate and my breathing would get better. And so I'm not saying that I've done anything different than anybody else, but I know my choices at that moment were to stay laying down or to get up and try to move. And I think throughout my life, I've tried to do that. Not always successfully, but I've tried to do that. Last week also, most of you know my grandson. I know this is kind of like a family reunion today with our community, and it's my family reunion and thinking about my family. But my oldest grandson, Julian, who usually gets on if he's here or if I'm there and waves to everybody because he's like the mayor of the world, he's 6.5. And last week, they did a project in his kindergarten class, and he's only got 10 kids in his kindergarten class, and they did self-portraits. And at 6 years old, self-portraits are usually a little alien. Somebody usually has an extra arm or leg or, a couple extra eyes or something like that. And so all their self-portraits were put on this mural, and the mural was taken a picture and it was sent home. So Ashley sent the mural to me. And Julian, who like me is Caucasian, is his little self-portrait with his little Bruins shirt that he drew on him, Boston Bruins. And his skin is a very dark tan. So Ashley's asking him about, your shirt and this, and like, oh, Jude, your face is a little different color than what your face is. What, why'd you make that choice? And what he said was, well, Mom, we have a new vice president and she's a girl. So I colored my skin to match hers. And at that moment, I said, another sign. The torch has been passed from the oldest generation to the youngest generation, because Julian, like my mom, never saw gender and never will see gender as a limit. And if somebody else has a different color skin or a different background or a different religion or a different something than we do, we can honor that. We can honor it. So the choices in a year, 525,600. It's a lot of choices. What will we do with it? Will we learn? Will we pass something along to another generation? What will we do with that? Each of us will do something differently, and that's what's so wonderful, that we all have these choices. Each minute represents a new opportunity, a new gift, a new chance. So with those thoughts, I will pass along what my mother would say to me. Go for it. So go for it. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about my mom during this time. I appreciate that.